All right, welcome everyone to the 2022 Ironman Lake Placid race preview and pre-race tips with QT2 Systems coach Tim Snow. Tim has raced Ironman Lake Placid many, many times over the years, and he has also spectated it. He's frequently found on the course and will be there again this year. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Reem. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this year's race preview and just some tips. We're about 3.5 weeks out from the big day. And so it's a pretty good time to check in on things and kind of make sure we're heading in the right track. So right off the bat, first thing, a little bit different than typical presentations is this presentation is going to be addressed from the perspective of QT2's 5 training cornerstones, or 5 cornerstones of performance: training, nutrition and restoration, event fueling, event pacing, and mental fitness. Training and nutrition/restoration all go into an athlete's preparation. Event fueling and event pacing all go to an athlete's execution. These things, along with mental fitness training, we need to kind of expand this vertical mustache, all go into a race event's outcome. So we're gonna cover each of these 5 aspects and from 3 different vantage points. One, the next, say, 3.5 weeks. So we're going to talk about training, restoration, fueling, and pacing, and mental fitness over the next 3 weeks, I would say. And then the same cornerstones during race week, and then the same cornerstones in the days right before the race, including the race. So just so you understand kind of the format we're going from, okay? So in these final weeks, that's the first thing we're going to cover. Training in the final weeks, we are kind of in taper time, okay? So depending upon the taper scheme you may be applying or having applied to your training, we are in the midst of this week here, okay? So we have, typically with QT2, we have 3 different taper schemes: the A taper, the B taper, and the C taper. The A, B, and C are not indicative of any one taper scheme being better or superior to any of the others. They are really just I would say a lack of creativity in naming. So the A taper scheme is typically for extremely high volume athletes who need additional rest. So it's usually a 6-week taper scheme, 2 overload weeks, about 6 weeks out, a recovery week, which you would be in now, what I call an up week, another recovery week, and then race week. Okay, so that's the A taper scheme. It is for extremely high volume athletes who would need the additional rest over these final weeks, or it is for the athlete who we have deemed to be physiologically more anaerobic. A physiologically more anaerobic athlete tends to need more recovery going into a big event. Okay, so that's the A taper scheme. The B taper scheme, which is probably the more popular of the taper schemes, is typically for your non-high volume athlete. So I didn't say low, I just said non-high. And for the more physiologically aerobic athletes. So this taper scheme is a 5-week taper scheme. It has your overload weeks, your planned overtraining here, which you would be in the midst of, a recovery week, an up week, and then race week. Sure. And then lastly, we have our C taper scheme. And this is for a lower volume athlete who we kind of can't afford to lose the volume going into race day because they would lose fitness in that time frame, or it's for the athlete who is extremely physiologically aerobic. Okay, so your athletes who just have a tendency towards long events. Okay, these are also the athletes who benefit from that. So these athletes would have a an overload period, which you would be in the beginning of. This is a 4-week taper scheme. Beginning of the overload period, not even a recovery, but really like I would call it a 70% week. If a recovery week is a 55% week, this week would be about a 70% week, and then race week. Okay, so that's where we are from a training standpoint. Now, also still covering the training cornerstone. What are the workout types that we are going to be experiencing over the next 3 weeks or so? So kind of like we talked about in the last slide, we're going to have peak run and bike volumes, which are 2 to 6 weeks out, depending upon a taper scheme. So the longest aerobic ride, the longest bike ride will be an aerobic steady, what QT2 calls zone 1 ride, and it'll be approximately 20% longer than your typical long ride. So if an athlete has typical long rides in the 4.5 hour range, then on their bike focus week, and I'm going to go back to the taper scheme in a minute, their bike focus week, that long ride may look more like 5.5 to 6 hours, maybe 5:45. Okay. And then also during a run overload week, we would split the long run, all done at an aerobic steady intensity. This is all about building durability. And that run would be about 20 to 25% longer than the typical long run. Just as an example, if your typical long run is in the 90-minute range, then on this particular overload week, we would probably do 120 minutes of volume, but split between 2 runs, say a morning run of about 60 minutes and an evening run of about 60 minutes. And these are going back to our taper scheme before. If we just choose the B taper for now, this week right here is where we would typically have our bike overload period, and this would be where we would have our run overload, or they can be flip-flopped. It doesn't really matter that much. But these are periods of planned overtraining, okay? We typically have very grumpy athletes during these weeks, and that is expected because we are stretching them. We are kind of squeezing out as much volume and fitness and durability as we can out of them, and then we go into the recovery period of the taper, okay? So that's the kind of peak kind of volumes and where we'll see those. Okay, now what are the workout types that we're going to see? We're going to see a lot of simulation of race intensities. So this isn't necessarily a period of time where we're going to be doing best effort speed work. We don't need to be on the track. We don't need to be doing a lot of super threshold work. Okay, what we're really doing is intensities that are going to mimic race day. Okay, a lot of over under bikes and runs, and a lot of what I call dial in rides and runs. And so I like to kind of think of it as during over the next 3 weeks, you're either riding at race intensity, or you're riding easy, or you're either running at race intensity or you're running really easy. Okay. And right here we have a typical, this is what a bike over under would look like, for an Ironman. So, and then say 10 minutes, this would be a 20-minute block. Okay. With 10 minutes at 78% of FTP, 10 minutes at 88% of FTP with a little bit of recovery. Repeat that 3 times. Okay. On the run, very similar idea. I have this written in wattage. Okay, so on the run, and I know that running wattage is something that's coming to be. It's not necessarily there yet, but it is coming to be. So these would be miles. So 1 mile at 82% of run FTP, 1 mile at 92% of FTP recovery. Okay, and we would repeat that 4 times. Each of these sets is a little bit under race intensity and a little bit over race intensity. little bit under race intensity, a little bit over intense race intensity, such that race intensity is right there in between. Okay. All right. So in the next 3 weeks, what are the restoration and day-to-day nutrition considerations we should have? The number one theme I can talk to is that this is the time to put your body into a position to succeed. Okay. How you feel on race day is going to have a lot to do with how you treat your body in the days before the race. That is going to have a lot to do with how you treat your body during race week. That is going to have a lot to do with how you treat your body over the next 3 weeks. Okay. So this is the time to set the tone. I like to say that hydration is a state of being. You want to make sure that you are taking in fluid at least half your body weight in fluid ounces, in addition to what is lost during your workouts. Okay, so make sure you are hydrating. Okay, hydration isn't something that we do; it is something that we are. Okay, so over the next 3 weeks, I would recommend that you are never outside of a 5-foot radius from some kind of water bottle. Okay, very, very important. I would also, over the next 3 weeks, maintain normal core diet-based eating habits. Just keep your nutrient density up. 4 daily servings of fruits and vegetables. You should just be eating normally. Okay. Try to make sleep a true priority. Aim for at least 7.5 hours per night, or at least stay in bed for 7.5 hours per night. At least start to focus on shutting down a little bit earlier, getting into bed a little bit earlier, even if you're not quite ready to sleep just yet. Just become more aware that this is the time to set that tone. Also, recovery drinks after all sessions. Okay, now is the time. If you were in doubt whether or not you should have a recovery drink after a workout or a workout session, then the answer is you should. Okay, so I would prefer more recovery drink than less. So this is the time to err on the side of more. Okay, and this is the time that you are, the recovery drinks, say, such as a clean recovery. That's a 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein. That 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein makes the muscle glycogen. You are replenishing muscle glycogen from the workouts that you are doing, and the protein is promoting repair for any muscle damage that you did. So this is the time to make sure that you're taking care of those kinds of details. All workouts should be fully fueled. And a big reason for that is that which has to do with restoration and day-to-day nutrition is when you are fueling your workout, when you are working out, when you're training, you are diminishing muscle glycogen. Okay. If you are fueling your workout, then you are replenishing that muscle glycogen as you're going, not necessarily at the rate at which you're burning it, but you are replenishing, and you are, in essence, kind of beginning your recovery during the workout. Okay, very important now that you do not allow yourself to slip into any kind of deficits in that way. Okay, also, and this is not perhaps the most popular bullet point, I imagine, but try to start to limit your caffeine use down to about 800 milligrams per week. That's a little over 100 milligrams per day. Do your best. What we would love to be able to do is to begin a taper down process over the next 3 weeks to have less and less and less caffeine, such that during race week, and particularly in the final 72 to 96 hours prior to the race, you are having almost no caffeine, so that when you do take caffeine during the race, it will feel like rocket fuel. I know that this sounds and seems a bit idealistic, but it can be a good goal, and you can start to taper it down a bit. Make sure during the next 3 weeks that you are having your Friday night replenishment meal. Going forward with that, I say Friday night because the purpose of it is to fuel the weekends, what is typically the weekends long workouts, long bike on Saturday, long run on Sunday. So we would typically do this on a Friday night. If you do your long stuff on Wednesday, then your long ride on Wednesday, long run on Thursday, then make this the Tuesday night replenishment. Okay, but that's the goal. So high in carbs, low in fat. So pasta, pizza, that kind of stuff. These are the kind of nights to have what we used to refer to as the cheat meal. Okay, and start to take anti-inflammatory measures. Just start to bring the inflammation in your body down as best you can. Daily omega-3 intake is in the 2 to 3 gram range. You should be hydrating. Start to be aware of the stress in your life, even if you can't necessarily do anything about it. Try to separate yourself from it as much as possible. Like I said before, sleep, and a diet high in fruits and vegetables. Fueling over the next 3 weeks, just stick to your fueling plan. Every single session should be fueled at the rate in which you will fuel on race day. And you want to be using the products that you have in your plan. A big purpose of this is to train your gut for race day. Like I said, it also helps to replenish muscle glycogen during the workout. So you're starting your recovery from the session, during the session, and very, very, very importantly is you want to be able to be putting yourself in a position such that on race day, when you intake one of your fuels, you know exactly how your body is going to respond to it. Okay, you don't want any surprises. Okay, any gut surprises. As best you can, drink Gatorade Endurance during every session at the rate expected on race day. That's what's going to be on the course. Again, fueling wise, the Friday night replenishment meal, I put it in 2 different places. I put it in the recovery section because it is in day-to-day, because it is in that sense, a recovery measure to make sure that your caloric needs are topped off, but also in the fueling, because we are using it as kind of a little mini carb load for what we call the typically weekend long workouts. Okay. So the Friday night replenishment meal serves 2 purposes: recovery and fueling. And as you know, there are so many athletes who over the years, they put months and months and months of training and sacrifice into doing an Ironman, only to on race day have a day limited by fueling. So, and fueling is one of the more fixable things that there is in Ironman racing. So why leave it to chance? Now is the time to really hone in on it. And I mean, 3 months ago was the time to really hone in on it and get it to where you want it to be. Now it's the time to there is still time to hone in, and now it's the time to just make sure that you are in the right spot with that. In the next 3 weeks, things to consider about pacing, and really the pacing dynamic starts to become about dialing in the workouts that you are dialing in the intensities that you are going to be racing at in your day-to-day workouts. So like I said earlier, we're going to do over/under bikes and runs. I have these expressed as percentage of FTP on the bike and percentage of run FTP on the run. So a typical bike over/under I kind of talked about, which is, say, these 20-minute blocks, 10 minutes under race intensity, 10 minutes over race intensity with a small recovery repeated 3 times. On the run, that over/under experience looks like 4 by 2 miles. It's a long workout. They can be cut down. It does not have to be 4 by 2 mile. It can be 4 by 1 mile. But however you want to do it, where the under is at about 77% of race intensity. The over is about 8. I'm sorry. No. where the under is about 77% of FTP, run FTP, and the over is at about 87% of run FTP. Repeated 4 times, that becomes a very solid workout, even though none of these particular miles are all that intense. Dial in rides and runs. So on the bike, this may be 4 by 30 minutes at race intensity, or in this case, I have it built up. So I would typically deem Ironman race intensity to be about 80% of FTP. So 30 minutes a little bit below, 2 by 30 minutes right at race intensity, and then 30 minutes just above race intensity, to give the whole descending effect on that, getting faster as you go. On the run, a dial-in run would be, and typically speaking, what we're going to see in an Ironman is that the athlete is going to, for run wattage, and again, talking about wattage specifically, the typical athlete is going to be somewhere between 78 and 85% of run FTP in an Ironman. And so just a very simple 5 by 1 mile workout with a small recovery in between at 81%, which would be about race intensity. Let's see, mental fitness in the final 3, over the next 3 weeks. As best you can, begin to reduce external pressures. I know that that is not a switch that one can simply switch to off, because if it were, I would imagine all among us would do that. But this is a good time to enter yourself into a quote unquote period of no. This is the time to say no to things, which would be applying pressure to you. It's only 3 weeks. You can get back to normal life on the 25th of July. But until then, all external pressures and those kinds of considerations, which may be taking away from your experience, need to be avoided as best you can. Begin visualization. So what is the best performance going to look like for you? What is coping imagery? So if you get a flat tire, what does that look like? What are you going to do about it? Visualize success. What does success look like to you? And then, and also going back to these kinds of workouts, okay? Yeah, I call it internalizing race-specific workout feels. So get a good sense of what these things feel like on the legs. Okay, what is the sensation that you have when you are operating at these race specific intensities? Okay. And then begin your logistics preparation. So make your list if you're a lister. Begin the packing process. Select your check-in times, because I know that in for sure, review the athlete guide. The athlete guide is going to spell everything out for you better than I can. But select the check-in times, confirm your reservations to make sure that you have a place to stay. Might be a good time to check on flights to make sure, because the airlines are a little crazy right now and people are having trouble to get places. Might be a good time to just check in and confirm that everything is as it's supposed to be if you're flying. Okay, mental fitness. This is a good time over the next 3 weeks to have an honest conversation with yourself. Where do you fall on this? And first of all, what is this? This is kind of a guide, and if somebody knows where I found this, I would love to give credit to the creator of this. I just don't know where I found it. I happened upon it, and then I have not known. I've been using it ever since. So if somebody happens to know where this is from, please let me know. But in the full distance, we have, after the swim, we have bikers who tend to be weaker and that tend to be stronger. And of the weak bikers, we have weak runners and we have strong runners. Of the strong bikers, we have weak runners and strong runners. And these are the kinds of typical wattage intensities that each respective type of athlete or can expect to use approximately on the bike and run. So have an honest conversation about which which tree, which pathway you follow. Are you a strong biker but weak runner? Are you a weak biker and strong runner? Are you a weak biker and weak runner? Okay, but have a good sense of where you think you fall, so that you can start to wrap your mind around what your numbers are going to look like on the day. Okay. And then next, this is a graphic that I came up with some time ago, and it really outlines. And okay, and so I'm sorry, I failed to say that we are now in the mental fitness cornerstone. So we are on the third slide of the mental fitness cornerstone. This is the first mental fitness cornerstone. This is the second, and now on the third. And in mental fitness, people often talk about what are your goals, and it's really important to be careful to make sure that our goals, or are they something else? Okay, so goals. If I'm looking at the graphic, goals are represented by this big gray circle. They are things over which we have a lot of control. Okay, maybe not total control, but a lot of control. They are things like, I will limit my intensity to 280 watts on the climbs. They are choices, right? Whenever I start to lose focus, I will take a gel or eat a Cliff Block. I will drink from my bottle at least every 10 minutes. Okay, these are the kinds of things over which we have total control. I will limit for example, I will limit my intensity to 280 watts on the climbs. Okay, that's a choice. Okay, that's not saying I will ride at least 280 watts. It's saying I will not ride more than 280 watts. And as your power meter starts to read 290, 300, you have entered into the realm of making a choice about things. So a true goal, and that is something over which you have very, very much control. So that is how we outline goals. So from this perspective, over the next few weeks, what are the kinds of things that you have near total control over, which would help to make a difference for race day? Okay, like I said earlier, starting to wind down at 9 o'clock at night rather than 10 o'clock at night, such that you get into bed earlier. Always having a water bottle within 5 feet of you. That's a choice that you can make. Okay. Now, and something over which we have some control, but not total control, are targets. These are these are typically numbers based. Okay. I want to go sub 11 at Ironman. I want to average 230 watts on the bike. I want to run a qualifying time for Boston. Okay. These are the assumption is that we are setting appropriate targets. Okay. If I want to average 230 watts on the bike, then we should have some data backing up that claim or that goal, that wish for that target. Okay. Now you may get out onto the course on race day and just don't feel like you have it. Okay, the legs are maybe a little bit flat, or maybe they're taking some time to come around. Now, in that case, you don't really have control over whether or not you're riding 230 watts. Okay, you have control over whether you ride 250 watts when the target is 230, but you don't, if your legs aren't generating wattage and they're only generating 210 watts, then you don't necessarily have that control. So these are kind of lower level in the hierarchy. We have some control, but not total control. So over the next 3 weeks, accept the fact that the hay is in the barn. You are not going to get into better shape before Ironman Lake Placid. Okay, that is very unlikely to happen. Okay, so therefore your numbers are probably where they're going to be. What do the appropriate pacing numbers look like for you? Start to have that conversation. Start to put yourself into that mind space. Okay. And then lastly, outcomes. Outcomes are things over which you have very little control. I want a podium in my age group. I want to qualify for Kona. I want to finish in the top 10 Well, you know what? So does everybody else. So for you to be successful in any of these outcomes, that means a whole bunch of other people have to fail at their outcomes. So you have very little control over this. You have no control over who shows up on race day, who registers for the event. These, I give them very little. It's the best I could come up with on this. Okay, just don't even think about it. All right. Okay, so now we exit into now we enter into race week. And I am defining race week really as being, for the purposes of this conversation, Monday through Thursday. So it is the 18th through the 21st of July. Okay. So here we are, and now we're gonna talk about each of the 5 cornerstones from the perspective of race week. All right. So training wise, keep in mind that during this time or for the race on Sunday, in a race of this distance, it is more important to be rested than to be sharp. Okay, so whereas if you were doing a sprint or 5K or an Olympic distance even, it's more important to be sharp than it is to be rested. Okay, and in Ironman, you would rather be flat at the outset when you get on the bike, not quite have your legs. They take a little while showing up, but they do eventually show up. Than to go into the race tired. Dragging your body into an Ironman is no way to start an Ironman. Okay. Therefore, err on the side of recovery. Okay. If in doubt, go easier than you feel like, easier than assigned, or take the day off. Okay. During this week, there should be a complete off day. There is no fitness, absolutely zero fitness to be gained in race week. So don't be a dope. You are more likely to ruin your race by trying to quote unquote gain fitness than you are to help it. Everything should be race specific or easier. If you are doing race specific intensities for any kinds of over unders, keep them short. So, where we were doing these 20-minute blocks with 10 minutes under, 10 minutes over, maybe we make these like 4 minutes under, 4 minutes over, and 3 sets of those. And where we were doing miles on the run of 1 mile under, 1 mile over, maybe now it's a quarter mile under, quarter mile over. It is all about just dialing in. Any workout of that nature is more about dialing in the intensity into your legs than any kind of fitness game. Okay. And if aerobic, keep the workouts on the shorter side with small bouts of tempo work. So 80 to 90-minute rides with not more than 15 to 20 minutes of tempo, 40 to 45 minutes on the run. Even that feels a little bit long, with 5 to 10 minutes of tempo. All right. Typical kind of race week. I stole this from Training Peaks, but I wanted to just have descriptors. So like I talked about, an off day. So we are really talking about Monday through Thursday here. Okay. I'll talk about Friday and beyond later on. But, an off day on Tuesday, swim. I'm sorry, on Monday, you do a swim. I would make it race specific. I'd keep it a little longer. It could be in the 3,000 to 4,000 yard range. It can have race intensities in it or harder. Swimming tends to be pretty safe. The bike, a very easy spin, not more than an hour. The run, a very easy jog, definitely not more than half an hour, but probably more along the lines of 25 minutes. Tuesday off. Wednesday, another good swim, race specific. It could be longer. Keep the bike easy, an easy spin, probably 60 minutes at the most. And then a run, say 35 to 45 minutes at zone 1, QT2, zone 1, zone 2. I put moderate. I put mod there. That means moderate. So 35 to 45 minutes with 5 to 10 minutes of a little bit of tempo work. Thursday, I like to keep the run, this particular run, a little bit further away from race day. Sometimes I would flip-flop these days, but on an Ironman week where it's more important to be rested than it is to be sharp, I try to keep the run a little bit further away from Sunday. The bike, similar idea, 80 to 90 minutes at most, depending upon your volumes. So moderate length, probably with 10 to 20 minutes of tempo work at the end of the bike, and then a very easy short run, 20 to 25-minute jog type thing. Okay. So that's Monday through Thursday. I'll talk about Friday and beyond later. Okay, restoration and day-to-day nutrition during race week. So still, this is Monday through Thursday. I'm only talking about Monday through Thursday right now. Eat a relatively normal diet. If the weather is forecasting for race day heat, start to apply a little bit of extra table salt to your meals. Okay, hydration is a focus now. We were kind of thinking about it before and trying to make it a priority, but now it's a focus. Liquid can come from plain water and or sports drink. Electrolyte drinks, which I refer to as the zeros. So these sports drinks that have flavor but no sugar in them. They are okay, but on a very, very limited basis. The reason for that is all of those, say, the flavor has to come from somewhere, right? And oftentimes these kinds of quote unquote fake sugars, if in too much bulk, can cause gastric issues. We don't need that during race week. So you want to have one a day here and there, so be it. Okay, during race week, that's fine, but they should not be the primary basis of your hydration during race week. Okay, so that's Powerade Zero, Gatorade Zero, Noon, those kinds, Pedialyte, those kinds of things where the carbohydrates are extremely low and the flavor is high. That has to come from somewhere. So there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So the cost or the price of that flavor comes in the potential of gastric distress if taken in too much quantity. So let's see, try to taper caffeine intake throughout the week with the goal in capitals of having none on the day prior to the race. Okay, so our goal is to put ourselves during this week, our goal is to put ourselves in a position to have no caffeine on Saturday. Okay, so all we are doing right now is trying to set ourselves up to meet that. Every training session should have a recovery drink after it, so clean recovery after every session. And by session, I mean, if you do a swim and then sometime later you're going to do a bike and run, have your recovery shake after the swim and then after the bike and run. But if you're going to swim, bike and run all boom, 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 one right after the other, then you can wait until the end of the run to have your recovery shake at that time. Okay. But no skimping on the recovery shakes during this race week. Sleep at least 8 hours per night. I know, again, that's not just something you necessarily choose to do. You don't necessarily get to choose to sleep, but if you can't sleep for 8 hours per night, at least lay in bed for that length of time. Okay. Read a book, watch TV. Let's just start with read a book. Okay. But just put yourself there, put your feet up, be in a position where you could potentially sleep for 8 hours. And try to stay, and that goes right in just trying to stay off your feet as much as possible during race week. Let other people do things for you as best you can. Try to get your travel to the race out of the way on the earlier side of things. And then lastly, just try to be aware of your stress levels and energy expenditures. So like go is a no. Okay, so don't this is kind of the week where you want to be as laid back as possible, or I know you don't just choose to be laid back, but you want just to do your best to take it easy and do things, I guess, do things slowly is the best way I could put it. And so, but if you do go through periods of stress or energy output, then take time away. So if you are, if you have to travel to your race and you have to spend, 4 hours getting to the airport, flying to flying to Albany, and driving up to Lake Placid, and that takes 5 or 6 hours, say, maybe 8 hours. When you get to Lake Placid, just you have expended enough energy for the day. Now, you don't need to get out and train or anything like that. Chill out, sit down, put your feet up, and allow yourself to recharge from that expenditure. There is no training that's going to take place that benefits you for Ironman Lake Placid. No training on Wednesday that is going to help you on Sunday more than recharging the batteries from a stressful day of travel. Okay. All right, moving into our fueling cornerstone during Monday through Thursday of race week. So continue to fuel in accordance with your race plan during every single session using the products that you're going to use. And we are now, our purpose is to make sure that muscle glycogen levels are never depleted. We don't want to come anywhere near depletion, and to always and they're always as close to topped off as possible. Drink Gatorade Endurance during every session at the rate expected on race day. Now, in workout zeros are forbidden. So during this race week, Monday through Thursday, any training sessions should be fueled, and any session ever should really be fueled without a zero drink. Okay. But they are absolutely forbidden during race week. Okay. Tuesday night is the night for our fat loading meal. An example of that is like a turkey burger with cheese, guacamole, bun, and a large order of sweet potato fries. It's not an opportunity to go out and get an ice cream sundae with all the fixings. This is the intent of this is a high nutrient dense meal. Studies have shown that a fat loading meal consumed about 5 days prior to a carbohydrate load, which you'll be doing on Saturday, helps the body to absorb the carbohydrates. Okay, so that's kind of our goal from that perspective. So now we move into the pacing cornerstone, Monday through Thursday. And I guess really here, I'm just going back to the workouts for the week. Pacing wise, we are, from a training standpoint, Monday through Thursday, do not violate any of the intended intensities. Well, I have an asterisk with that, and just to make sure that violation means go above the intended intensities. If the top end is tempo, then don't go above tempo. There is no excuse, no reason to be doing high-end work in this Monday through Thursday range. Now, if you get out there and you're supposed to do an aerobic tempo ride on Thursday and the legs aren't feeling it, they feel the zone 1, but they're not feeling the zone 2, don't force them into zone 2. You can stay below zone 2 and just stay in zone 1 and keep it an aerobic ride. Even though zone 2 is aerobic, but you can violate down, but you can't violate up. Okay, you can keep it easier than intended, but do not violate on the way with higher intensity than is intended. Okay. Another, from the pacing standpoint, this is where we are dialing into your pacing mindset. Okay, what do these intensities feel like on the bike? Okay, so feel like I have in caps because you want to get that sensation. Okay, are you going to be RPE trustworthy during the race? Okay, and to be RPE trustworthy, you need to know what a race intensity is supposed to feel like. What do the intensities feel like on the bike? What do they feel like on the run? Start to wrap your head around what your race is going to feel like. Okay, and your race is in capitals, or the yours, because you are focused on your performance, not anybody else's. Okay, and this isn't what you want your pacing to be. This is what is appropriate pacing for you. Okay, if you want your race day wattage to be 230, but you only have evidence that suggests 205 watts, then you don't get the 230, you get the 205. Okay, wrap your head around that fact. All right, mental fitness during race week, Monday through Thursday. I have crossed out the as best you can, begin to reduce external pressures, and just said reduce external pressures, okay? This is when you put your away message on your emails. You'll get back to them on Monday, the 25th, okay? This is a full-on visualization mode. What does it look like to hit your targets? Remember, targets being the kind of pacing numbers that are appropriate for you on race day. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What can go wrong? What will you do when it does go wrong? Can you put yourself in a position to respond and not react? Okay, the implication being that a response is thought out and intended, and a reaction is the opposite of that. Not thought out, not intended, just done. This can be a time, if you have the time and it's not stressful to you, this can be a time to drive a loop on the bike and run courses, or perhaps even have somebody else drive the loop for you, where you sit in the passenger seat and just observe, but just to see what you're going to be up against if you haven't seen it before. And then I put this in mental fitness: register early, get it done and out of the way. As Forrest Gump would say, one less thing. Just be done with it as soon as you can be. And this also gives you an opportunity to go through all your stuff, make sure you have all your stuff, and then always just review the athlete guide for any particular considerations you may have for race day. That tends to be quite robust. To revisit this again, we've already talked about what all this means, but during race week, Monday through Thursday, our goals really, the language changes from over the next few weeks to over the next few days. What are the things that you have near total control over, which would help to make a difference for race day? Okay. So for example, you have near total control over turning your away message on your email. Near total, I know not total, but near total. You have near total control over taking in your fat loading meal on Tuesday night. You have near total control over getting to registration, getting it done, and getting it out of the way. Okay. So what are the things over the next few days that you can do that are going to help you to prepare for race day? You have near total control over if you have a heavy energy expenditure, say because of travel on a Wednesday, of taking that time after you've expended the energy, when you've got to your hotel for the race or wherever you're staying, to just put your luggage down, put it aside, and just relax and just chill for a couple of hours to allow the batteries to recharge. You have control. That is a choice you get to make. And targets wise, now this is the point where the hay is very much in the barn. You are done with any kind of fitness building, and so this is where you want to know what your numbers are going to be during in the days or the week leading into the event. You want to know what those numbers will be so you can really start to wrap your head around them. And outcomes wise, just put your blinders on. You're at the race venue. There's going to be a lot of athletes around. You're probably at some point going to feel like you didn't prepare enough because everybody else looks so fit and you don't feel like you do, blah, 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 blah. We've all said it. We've all done it. So just do your best to ignore those around town. Also, I mean, I know much easier said than done, but be aware of it. All right. Moving into race day, and I am referring to race day as being Friday through Sunday. Okay. So going into the training cornerstone, and so Monday through Thursday are behind us, and Friday through Sunday, as you can see, training wise, there's nothing to do. Okay. Anything that you're doing Friday through Sunday is really just testing out equipment. And some people may flip flop this Friday and Saturday, whatever. Depends on the athlete. But you are on a crazy easy spin, just making sure your tires are holding air. You are crazy short run, just making sure your shoes fit, and pretty much the same on the swim. You know, you can do some short sprints, but keep it really short, just to make sure that your goggles don't leak water. That is the intent, training wise, of in between Friday and Sunday. Okay, Saturday's typically dedicated to the carb load. Restoration and day-to-day nutrition wise, in that cornerstone, we are shifting away from our normal, quote unquote, healthy core diet. Okay, the focus turns to carbohydrates, some lean proteins, and small amounts of fats, fiber, and vitamins/minerals. Okay, so carbohydrates and proteins, and we are getting away from the fats, the fibers, the vitamins, minerals. Okay, hydration is an absolute priority. We are avoiding the zeros. Be careful not to overly hydrate, flushing your system of essential electrolytes not found in sports drinks. So one thing that we have seen oftentimes, and Lake Placid doesn't really apply for this because the conditions are relatively moderate, is particularly when athletes are preparing for an extremely hot race, they hydrate so much that they may drink as much, they may drink their body weight in Gatorade, but Gatorade doesn't have things like magnesium in it, and as a result, they flush their system out of the magnesium, and end up with these weird cramping episodes outside of exercise. So just be aware of that. It's probably not a necessary thing for Ironman Lake Placid, but you want to be absolutely hydrating. Just be careful not to overly hydrate. You don't have to go crazy because the environment tends to be, it's one of the tamer races, climactic wise. If you can avoid caffeine, do it. So do your best to stay away from caffeine during the 72 hours prior to the race. It will be worth it. Some people say that they need caffeine in order to go to the bathroom in the morning. I don't know if I believe that. The body will go to the bathroom if it needs to go to the bathroom. I think that probably what happens is people get up in the morning and they have a cup of coffee first thing, and about a half an hour later they have to go to the bathroom, and they have said, "Oh, I had to go to the bathroom because of my coffee." And I don't think that's the case. I think you would go to the bathroom anyway. But over these next 3 days, feet up as much as possible. Try to do nothing. Okay. And lastly, just log out of life. Okay. Go missing for the next 72 hours. Okay. We can see you, the next time we see you can be on the athlete tracker. Fueling wise for Saturday. So it really starts on Friday. Okay. The fueling for the race. So Friday should have a slightly carb focused lunch and dinner, some kind of sub, like a 6-inch sub from Subway, turkey sub, that kind of thing, and maybe a pasta dish for dinner. On Saturday, we have a massive breakfast, pancakes, hash browns, eggs, toast. Try to avoid the coffee, try to avoid the sausage, try to avoid the bacon. Those are choices that you do not have to make. Those can be goals. And also just hydrate, lots of water, and or sports drink. You have should be carb focused, not carbo focused. Carb focused lunch. So this is not the day for a salad. So again, get yourself a 6-inch sub from Subway, turkey sub, whatever. Try to keep it. This is a good day to keep, I'd say, not a good day for a salad. So try to keep the vegetables out of the sub as much as best you can. We just don't need the fiber in those the day before the race. So, a sub on white bread and turkey, and go. Pretty simple and plain. Then you're just gonna snack throughout the day: pretzels, fat-free fig Newtons, and plenty of sports drink. The pretzels give you the salt, and then a small dinner early. 1 cup of dry pasta and half of a chicken breast. Spelled that wrong. or typo, you may even go to bed just slightly hungry. So the idea is to have a massive breakfast, feel terrible, and then kind of taper out throughout the day, getting such that you have a small little carbohydrate focused meal at night, even to the point where you may even go to bed feeling slightly hungry, which that will be fixed on Sunday morning. And on Saturday, absolutely no zeros, but plenty of hydration. You need the increased hydration in order to be able to absorb all of the carbohydrates that you're going to take in on Saturday. Race fueling, I'm sorry, morning breakfast, still under the fueling. Cornerstones, simple carbohydrate, fluid, electrolytes, small amount of protein. So studies have shown that a small amount of whey protein on race morning can help performance. So no fat, fiber, or extra vitamins and minerals. The core diet recommends we do unsweetened applesauce, a banana, 1 scoop of whey protein, and sports drink, a bottle of sports drink. Unsweetened applesauce in a large amount. One thing that the unsweetened applesauce does is it gives you a low glycemic carbohydrate source in the applesauce, and it also it hydrates. It's very hydrating, and it also it will make you go to the bathroom. But you need to have these things into your body about 3 hours prior to race start. You will feel this breakfast on race morning is overwhelming. I recommend that you practice it at least once or twice in the next 3 weeks before before race morning. And so but one thing that the race breakfast will do is it'll put you into the porta potty prior to race start. So you'll be in a good position to kind of be fully evacuated, if you will, before the gun goes off. After that, you're sipping on sports drink as needed. Again, you're extremely hydrated from the applesauce and from the sports drink. And then right before the start, 15 to 20 minutes, take a gel. As best you can, try to make it a non-caffeinated gel. We're going to try and push caffeine off until later in the day when we need it. Fueling, still in the fueling cornerstone, follow your race fueling plan, race with what you have trained with, carry what you need, okay? Consume extra fluids the first hour of the bike. You should pee at least twice on the bike. So you want to set yourself up to have to pee at least 2 times on the bike in Ironman. That is a very good rule of thumb. Athletes who pee at least twice on the bike typically have run performances that are in line with what their training suggests. Okay, athletes who pee fewer than 2 times on the bike typically are entering into a state of dehydration that is greater than 2%, which starts to really limit performance. Okay, so good rule of thumb is to pee twice on the bike at least. Air towards sports drink. So if you are drinking, well, everything should be, you should have, if you are drinking something, it should typically be sports drink. But water, we consider water to be a blank because it has no sodium in it. It has no carbohydrate in it. So though there may be times in a race when your stomach just can't handle the sugars or something like that, and that is okay to have water as a hydration source. Water is better than nothing, okay? But if you can handle sports drink, you should be having sports drink. All right, and you want to carry sodium on your person if you experience even a hint of cramping, or you look down at your kit and you're seeing a lot of white on your kit. That is your body pushing out sodium. That is a good time to just take some sodium. If you have an energy low, take some sodium. Okay, it's typically not the wrong answer. It can be the wrong answer, but 98% of the time it is not the wrong answer. Okay, and then on this course there are aid stations every 15 miles on the bike and every mile on the run. Gatorade Endurance all the way through, orange for the bike and lemon lime for the run. And then there are Morton gels, caffeinated and non-caffeinated. I have an additional sodium note here, which I will talk to you about Morton gels in a second. So Morton gels and the fueling cornerstone, they are, I consider them to be substandard. I do like the texture of them. I'll say that they are very different texture, but from a gel standpoint, there are definitely better options out there. And my main complaint is that they have quite low in sodium, 22 milligrams of sodium per gel, versus in something like a power gel, which has 200 milligrams of sodium per gel. And so that is or even a Gatorade gel, which has about 90 milligrams of sodium per gel. Really, you need to consider a Gatorade gel you need 2 of those. So that's really about 180 because they're lighter, they're just lighter. So you'd probably take 1.5 gels in the time that you would take a different gel. So that would be like 135 milligrams of sodium, quote unquote, per gel. My point being is that Morton gels are extremely low in sodium. So they must be supplemented with another source of sodium. Otherwise, you are really putting yourself in a threatening position to just be low. And you can have cramping, you can have sloshy stomach, you can have energy lows, and all because you think you're taking in the right thing. My other complaint with the Morton gel is they are extremely high in caffeine. So one thing I do like about the Morton gels is that the gels in the black packaging are non-caffeinated, and the gels in the white packaging are caffeinated. That's very simple, but the caffeine is 100 milligrams per pop, which a lot of gels, most gels are somewhere between 20 and 50 milligrams per pop. It's nice to get a nice dose of caffeine when you need it on the race course, but sometimes 100 milligrams, if you've already had a few 100 milligram gels, a third or a fourth 100 milligram gel can start to wreak havoc on your system. And so I just wish there was some level of middle ground there. So I would typically recommend against these gels and recommend carrying your own stuff. Okay. Entering into the pacing portion of the pacing cornerstone of Ironman Lake Placid in the final days. So the swim is a self-seated rolling start. I recommend the first 200 to 300 meters up tempo and then settle in. The bike is mountainous. Some courses are flat, some courses are hilly. This one is mountainous. There are long sustained climbs and fast ascents. Your variability index, which is your normalized power divided by your average power, is going to be high. Okay, because you're going to have a lot of zeros from the descents. But having said that, as mountainous as it is, which implies hills, it is not a steep course. So it's not a course where matches need to be burned. Most of the climbs are quite gradual. So be advised on that. On the run, the climbs on the run are rough, but otherwise it is a pretty fair rolling course. And on some of those rough climbs, which at Lisa G's, which is just entering into town, and at the ski jumps, is most likely that walking is more efficient than running. So I would say a good power walk up these nasty climbs is going to be more beneficial, more bang for the buck than running. You will probably go slower than if you were running, but only slightly so, and at only a fraction of the energy expenditure to do so. On the swim, so still pacing the swim. The pros start at 6:25. Age groupers will start rolling in at 6:35. I would recommend that you seed yourself 3 to 4 minutes faster than you expect to swim. Ask around. Okay, so just get in line, and if you want to swim an hour and 15, start just asking around for globs of people who are going to swim around 1:11, 1:12. Okay, and get in with them. Most people tend to be a little optimistic on their swim times. The nice thing about the rolling start is it creates a line of people rather than necessarily a wrestling match. So I would, as you roll in, you're probably gonna have, you know, just a few people around you at any one time. So it's much less of a fight. So I would stay up tempo through about the second buoy, maybe as far as the third buoy, and then just settle into your race pace. There's no need to go out significantly faster than you should. You know, there's no need to go out crazy fast like in the mass start days. We need to get ahead of the crowd, or so you don't end up behind a wall of humans. You know, you loop around, you go around, come around, you pop out, short little run on the beach, and do it all again. And I drew in this boathouse. In this boathouse, it's a brown boathouse. It is typically, that's about 400 meters to the finish. Okay, so when you see that on the second loop, you have about 400 meters left. Okay, let's see the water temperature. It'll probably be wetsuit legal. I was up there in early June. I was swimming without a wetsuit. That said, it was chilly, so it was probably in the high 60s, low 70s. There were times when I was swimming without a wetsuit when I said, I should have had a wetsuit on. And there were times when, if I did wear the wetsuit, I was extremely comfortable. I suspect that it will probably be wetsuit legal, but it could be close. So just be prepared that it might not be. Like I said, drafting is easy on this course because you're entering in a line of people, a stream of people. Probably, I bet you 8 people at a time. So you just kind of fall into line, and you have the cable. I mean, it has a cable all the way around it. It's like a pool. So people are gonna just fall right into the cable, and you just follow the cable around. You never even have to look up. But the turns will be a little bit crowded, so you can stay a little wide for that. Let's see, pacing on the bike. The bike is 2 loops. First 5 miles of each loop are extremely hilly. I know it doesn't look like they're crazy hilly here, but they actually are extremely hilly. The keen descent is fast, so be careful, but there's plenty of flat terrain. There's the flat stretch here, and then there's the Hazelton out and back here. So those are really good places to build speed. Try to stay out of the draft packs as best you can. So you know, hilly. This is flat through here on the map. This is hilly through here. Hazelton is flat, except for the very end of it. And then you begin the climb back to town, the 11-mile climb back to town. So that is that. Pacing the bike, I put together this figure here, and I hope that it kind of makes sense for you. So I'll do my best. I will do my best. So we have what I would consider to be a baseline wattage, and I put asterisks next to all the wattages. What I mean with the asterisk means baseline wattage is what I call a cross-sectional wattage. You will not average this wattage, but when you look down at your power meter, that is the number that you see on your power meter. Okay, you will most likely average something lower than that if done correctly. So let's say, for example, that a baseline wattage is 200 watts. Okay, now a baseline that is the kind of wattage that you ride on the flats or in kind of non-windy conditions. Okay, and then you have wattages that you ride on climbs. Okay, and typically that is baseline plus 20 to 50 watts. Okay, so if baseline's 200 watts, the climbing wattage is going to be 220 to 250. Okay, 220 for long, shallow climbs, 250 for short, steeper climbs. Okay, and then we have in purple here our descending wattage. Okay, which is where we're just trying to keep wattage up. So it's baseline less 15 to 25 watts. If baseline's 200, then this is 175 to 185 watts. These are descents that are worth pedaling because you can generate some wattage, but you acknowledge the fact that you can't get wattage as high as you would. Okay, because there just isn't enough resistance from the road. And then there's points when you just should coast. So I tried to put on the map when those things might occur. Okay. So for example, when you leave transition and kind of get rolling, that's kind of a baseline wattage time. So in our example, that's 200 watts. And then you're going to enter into this, after you get past the ski slopes, you're going to enter into the pre-descent stage, which has the Mount Van Hovenberg out and back, but also I consider this to be an extremely hilly section, but also with some descending. So it's a lot of big rollers, big long rollers. So this is a period where when you're climbing, you want to be in this 220 to 250 range. And then when you're descending, these are descents that you can pedal down, okay? And then you hit the big descent, okay? And that is, for the most part, save for a little bit here and there, a coast, okay? I would just save the energy. And then you get into 9N, okay, the fast and flat section, and that's where you dial right into your 200 watts, your baseline wattage. You turn left on the Route 86. Now you're in that 220 to 250. This is a long, about a 1.5 mile climb. I would probably do this at about closer to the 220 to 230 range because it is so long, in my 200 watt example. And then you crest out on that and you just descend. You can see white face off in the distance, and that is just fast. And I would just coast through that. That enters you up towards the Hazelton out and back, where you're dialing into your baseline wattage. And then Hazelton dumps you into the final 11 miles. This is the first loop. You can do the same on the second loop. And on the final 11 miles, you are for the most part climbing, but there are extended periods where you may be able to dial into your baseline wattage. Not a lot of descending during this time. Okay, so for the most part, you're going to be riding, I would say, because it's so long, closer to 220, okay, 220 to 230 in this range, but there will be times when the road flattens out and you can just dial back down into baseline. Okay, I hope that makes sense to people. Now, moving into the run, pacing the run, 2-lap out and back course, 1,600 plus feet of elevation gain, and just a lot of rollers with some pretty significant climbs. Here's the elevation profile. I did a very similar thing for this as I did with the bike, where now I don't have to explain this much, but you're going to have a baseline intensity, whether you measure it by wattage, pace, or heart rate. You are going to, that's what you're holding, that's what you're running on the flats. You're going to have a baseline, you're going to have a climbing intensity, which I would say, if you're running by wattage, which should be baseline wattage plus 15 to 20 watts. If you're running by pace, that's your baseline pace plus 30 seconds per mile about. Or if you're running by heart rate, it's your baseline heart rate plus 5 to 6 beats per minute. And then you're going to have a descending intensity, which is your base, if you're running by wattage, baseline wattage less 15 to 20 watts. Pace wise, baseline pace less 30 seconds per mile, and heart rate wise, baseline heart rate less 5 to 6 beats per minute. I'll use a wattage on this just as an example. So if the baseline wattage is 200 watts, then our climbing wattage is going to be closer to 215 to 220. Our descending wattage is going to be closer to 180 to 185. And unfortunately, when running, there is no coasting, okay? If your goal pace, or target pace, I should say, not goal, if your target pace is 9-minute miles, then your climbing pace should be somewhere around 9:30s. Your descending pace should be somewhere around 8:30s, okay? And then I went through and on the course, kind of broke it out. Is purple, so this is right out of transition. You are descending heavily. You want to keep that in control as best you can. This is where a lot of people ruin their day. I am typically standing at about 300 meters into the run, telling a lot of people to slow down. I would say correct 95% of the time about whether or not a person should be slowing down. Every once in a while, somebody shuts me up and they come blasting up the hill on the second loop, almost just as fast as they left transition on the way out. But most of the time, I can identify somebody who's taking up the run way too fast because of the nature of the descent. Okay, you can ruin your run right here. So if you see me out there telling you to slow down, slow down. And then you kind of dial in, you have a nice long section that you dump down at the ski slopes or onto River Road. Okay, you're just going to be able to dial into your intensity on River Road, and then you're going to have to climb out of River Road up the ski slopes. You'll notice the red dots. Climb up, and then you have a flat section as you run towards town. You have the big climb into town, and then out on along the lake, along Mirror Lake and back. And then you do it all again. I have kind of starred these climbing sections because I recommend that they are good sections to potentially walk. So to walk the climbs, because like I talked about earlier, it can be more efficient. Okay, and lastly, we move into the mental fitness cornerstone of race day. So this is where we do our best to focus on your controllables and nothing else. Don't even consider the things you have no control over. Something, perhaps a few different, so recognize the fact that you are doing an event that is going to take you somewhere between 9 and 17 hours, okay? And in the course of any day in a life, of any stretch of time, of 9 to 17 hours, doing anything, something always goes wrong or not to plan. Okay, that is going to happen to you on race day. There is something or things that are not going to go to plan. Will you respond to those things, or will you react to those things? How will you behave when things don't go to plan? Okay, so start to plan that out. Start to think about that. And then I don't love that they call Ironman a race, because it gives the mindset of a speed and intensity and heavy breathing and that kind of stuff. This Ironman is really, in QT2 terms, a zone 1 day. It's 80 to 86% of threshold heart rate. It's 78 to 82% of wattage bike or run. Okay, so it's a race, but at a low intensity race. And just with that, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but don't try to be what you ain't. Okay, and I'll talk about a little more about that in a second. On this one, what are the things that you have near or total control over today, which would help to make a difference in the race? Sticking to your hydration schedule, putting your blinders on and ignoring what other people are doing on the course. Those are things over which you have total control. Okay, those are your goals. Targets, again, don't try to be what you ain't. Hit your numbers. You want 230, but you only have the data or the evidence for 215. You're a 215 person. Okay, don't try to be 230 if you're a 215. So by 230, I mean wattage, right? You want 230 watts, but you don't have the backup. You're 215 watts. And then outcomes, just que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. You're going to do your race. You're going to execute, and you will beat some people. Some people will beat you. You have no control over that. You have no control over what they do. So don't even consider placements or anything like that until you are at least through the 13-mile mark on the run. And then just a quick checklist: focus on your goals as your number one priority. So the things you have total control over: attitude, fueling, pacing. Secondly, focus on your predetermined targets. Don't go changing targets mid-race, because your friend Joey just blew by you, and in order to keep up with Joey, you need to hold 250 watts. No, you need to let Joey go. Okay, so don't go changing your metrics based upon the context of the race or what you want. stick to your plan, and outcome should be left for the second half of the run. Lastly, 2 pacing things. This is, I put, and it's funny, I put this into the mental fitness section because it's on the theme of you be who you are and don't be who you ain't, right? So this is a pacing profile of one of our athletes from long ago. She, at the time, she was one of the best triathlon runners in the world. This is from Kona. This is a person who executed her race perfectly and according to the plan that was given to her. And so, as you can see, most of it. So what we have here is mileage on the horizontal axis, pace on the vertical axis, and then the dotted line is heart rate. Okay, we see some pace variations, which probably, but for the most part, a pretty steady pace. Most of these pace variations probably had more to do with terrain, so hitting a hill or running down a hill, than they did with, say, performance. But what you see is this athlete averaged on the day 6:48 per mile. Okay, but having averaged 6:48 per mile on the whole day, she ran the first mile at about 7:20. Okay, so she was and this is why it's in the mental fitness section. Okay, she took confidence in her plan and executed on the plan. She was told, be conservative at the beginning, and she was therefore conservative at the beginning, and it resulted. So this investment in the opening mile, and this was in Kona, so the investment was in controlling the heat. Okay, this investment in the opening mile paid off over the course of the entire run. What you see here, so in the first half versus the second half, from a heart rate standpoint, her heart rate in the second half of the run was greater than her heart rate in the first half of the run, meaning she was able to stimulate her running legs throughout the entire race. Okay, you see, just from the heart rate file, relatively steady. We are, for the most part, bouncing between 148 and 144 beats per minute, right? So pretty narrow range, and she was able to stimulate at the end and run really strong at the end. Her pace from the first half to the second half, 6:47s over the first 13 miles, 6:48s over the next 13 miles. Okay, almost no degradation whatsoever, so this is an athlete who was a strong runner, behaved like a strong runner, and trusted her plan, and proved out to be a strong runner. Averaged 6:48 for an entire marathon, went out at 7:20-ish. Okay, so that is somebody who trusted in who she was. Then a different athlete, this is in Kona as well, so this is under the theme of don't be who you ain't. This athlete was impatient at the beginning. I don't believe that this is correct. This is not correct. The average pace was not 7:16. The opening mile was 7:16. Okay, this athlete was not a 7:16 opening miler in an Ironman marathon, but went out at that pace. And as you can see, the day didn't get any better. So the pace only got slower throughout the day. The final 5 to 6 miles were quite slow relative to the rest of it. Heart rate, there's a significant decouple between pace and heart rate. So pace got slower, heart rate got lower. This is an athlete who is basically whose legs have shut down. You'll see that again, and the average pace was probably, let's see, 11:45:22, probably about 8:11s. So average pace 8:11s, went out at 7:16s. So in the first half, average 7:49. Opening mile at 7:16, average for the first 13, 7:49s. Okay, and for the second the back half, 8:34s. Heart rate, you'll see a big drop. Average for the first 13 miles, 153 beats per minute. For the second 13 miles, 145 beats per minute. Okay, that is the legs quitting on her during the race. So And this was just an athlete who wanted to run a pace that she could not run, tried to run that pace. And well, you can see the result. That is it. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We have a couple questions in the chat box, Tim.
Okay.
All right, so the first one is put in pretty early on when you were talking about the taper scheme. And the question is, do you have advice for an athlete B who is sick?
An athlete B who is sick. Let me just go back. So this one, an athlete B who is sick. Any advice for that? I would say that potential, it depends how sick. If you're going to miss your overload period, you could probably switch into a C taper scheme, and maybe so that you get the overload period, and then maybe bring this week right here, this what I would consider to be like a 70% week, closer down to a 50% week. So get your durability training in, but make sure you have the recovery.
Okay, second question. Isn't the run course a little different this year? Only one climb up the big hill at the end and 2 loops through the horse area.
I'm going to say that is yeah, that's probably going to be the case. When I was in town in early June, it is clear that the town is not necessarily fully ready for the typical version of this event. That was prior to my seeing the race guide. So it would potentially make sense to me that they would not want 2 loops on Main Street, because one lane is just kind of doesn't exist, I guess is the best way to put it. So that is a most likely yes.
All right, so if anyone else has any questions, you can either put them in the chat box or feel free to come off of mute and ask your question directly. All right, we have another question in the chat box. Did you say the bike IF should be around 80% of FTP?
The bike intensity factor should be around 80% of FTP, yes. So that's about a top zone 1 effort. It really depends on your durability. If you have good durability training, and what I would say is if you have 2/3 of critical volume, which would be about 200 miles of cycling per week within the final 6 weeks of training, then you are somebody who can be in the, I would say, 78 to 80% range of FTP, which would be a similar intensity factor, yes.
That's all we have in the chat box now. If anyone has any last questions, please go ahead and ask them, or you can always follow up with Tim at a later point too. All right, I think that's it.
Thank you, Eva.
All right, thank you. Have a good night, everyone. And this
Thank
recording
you.
will be available.